ethical and legal principles and roles and leadership in this video series. I'll go over nurse practitioner core competencies, also go over scope of practice for nurse practitioners, along with the full practice, reduced practice, and restricted practices in the states, and standards of practice determined by ANA. Let me start off by asking a question. What is every nurse practitioner required to know once he or she graduates from nurse practitioner school? Now, here I have a list of core competencies. These are the core competencies applied to all nurse practitioner, regardless of their medical specialty or even patient population focus. So nurse practitioner core competencies were created by experts in clinical practice and education. The competencies are essential behaviors of all nurse practitioners. These competencies are demonstrated upon graduation. And as you can see here, all nurse practitioners upon graduation are expected to meet a set of core competencies that are listed here, such as scientific foundations, leadership, quality, practice inquiry, technology and information literacy, policy, health delivery system, ethics, and last but not least, independent practice. Okay, so now fast forward, you got the core competencies. Here you are, a nurse practitioner. How do you know what are the procedures or the actions or the processes that take place in a healthcare system for a nurse practitioner? Well, this is going to be defined under the scope of practice. So what defines nurse practitioner's role and actions is going to be under scope of practice. This identifies competencies assumed to be held by all nurse practitioners who function in a particular role. Now, it does vary broadly from state to state, and it is determined by state legislative statutes. So, State Board of Nursing, remember that, it's very important. Anything that I have written in red, it's important for you to know. So it's important to know that you do not practice against your scope of practice. So for example, let's say you are a psychiatric nurse practitioner, right? You don't want to make a diagnosis of a cancer or based on a radiology report. You cannot make that diagnosis. That's not your scope of practice. You have to let maybe a family nurse practitioner or their doctor make that call. So you always want, if you get a patient such like that, you always want to make sure you refer that patient out to the appropriate provider. So as an NP, we know it is important to collaborate with other health professionals as well. And this process is called interprofessional collaboration. Interprofessional collaboration is in healthcare, it helps to prevent medication errors, it helps to improve the patient's experience, and to have a better patient outcome. So fast forward, let's just say here you are as a nurse practitioner, got your license, got your degree. What you do not want to do is write prescriptions to your family members. It's not recommended, especially controlled substances, okay? As an NP, we know, depending on the state that you're in, the laws and the regulations are going to be different compared to another state. So here I have a map of all the 50 states, and you can see the green color are the full practice states, the yellow are the reduced practice states, and the red are the restricted practice states. Now, let's talk about standards of practice. This is determined by ANA, and these are basically authoritative statements regarding the quality and type of practice that should be provided. And this provides a way to judge the nature of care that's being provided. This can be used legally to describe the standard of care that is met by a nurse practitioner, and it's maybe precise protocols. This might be more of a general guideline that's recommended. So, the nurse practitioner is required by law to carry out care with what other reasonable nurse practitioners would do in the same or similar situations. Okay, so real quick, I know I mentioned about scope of practice and standards of practice. What is the difference? It seemed similar, but at the same time confusing maybe for some of you guys. So I just want to clarify that. Scope of practice for nurse practitioners includes able to diagnose conditions, being able to prescribe medications, and suggesting treatments to patients. Now, this does vary from state to state, remember, so depending on the state that you're in, this is going to vary. Now, standards of practice now are going to be care that is provided by other reasonable, prudent nurse practitioner and in that similar situation or circumstance with the same experience. So this would be somebody, for example, asking, did the clinician do the right thing at the right time? Was the care that was provided effective to the patient? Or asking, was care provided safely and in an appropriate time frame for the patient? So these are the questions that you would come up with or come to answer based on standards of practice. So I hope you enjoyed today's session. Don't forget to give the thumbs up and do subscribe in case you aren't subscribed. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.